Mavs Fans for Life podcast. I'm Landon Thomas, joined by my co-host Shahnavaz, Makhani. Oh, damn, I heard my voice cracking there. I might even leave this in there.
It's an exciting time. It's okay to be cracking voices.
It's a very exciting time. Hey, we're all human. I'll leave this in here.
There you go.
So, Shahnavaz, this is the free agency episode, and man, I mean, this is the time to do it because we got three topics to talk about. We got Klay Thompson chose the Dallas Mavericks to reach an agreement, 3 years, $50 million. It'll be part of a 3-team trade that will send Josh Green to the Hornets. And then we also got to talk about THJ is traded to Detroit basketball. He's traded to the Pistons for Quentin Grimes. Also, some second-round picks were with THJ. So, what happened to Derrick Jones Jr.? Man, Derrick Jones Jr., man, I really like that guy. And as a player, too, but just personally, man, he was a great guy. But they get Naji Marshall from the Pelicans. So they get a similar player. So, first, let's just talk about Klay Thompson. That's why everyone tuned in. That's the big major breaking news. Okay, so obviously the era of the Golden State Warriors is over. I mean, let's be honest, the big three, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, they had their last of their run. So I know the Warriors fans are going through it right now. They might be tuned in too, just to see on the flip side with the Mavericks as we cover them. So Shahnavaz, for the Mavericks side of it, what goes in your mind? So obviously, let me set this up because you have the Lakers and the Mavericks as his two teams that he talked to face to face when free agency started. You have LeBron calling you. And then the Lakers brass in there talking to you. Then you have Kyrie calling you or hitting you up, and then you have the Mavericks brass talking to you. What's going on in your mind when Klay Thompson chooses the Dallas Mavericks?
I was shocked. And you know this because you and I were texting about this, throughout the night, last night, and into today. And it may be just from years of the Mavericks not getting any free agent that they've gone after, of any big name, anything like that.
Is Donnie Nelson haunting you right now?
Still, I mean, after this, I'm that Donnie Nelson era is officially gone.
Nico cook.
Oh boy, look at what Nico has done, man. I mean, look with Klay Thompson. I mean, he met with two teams. The Lakers thing, we talked about this. The Mavericks made a lot of sense basketball-wise. Like, if he wants to go somewhere to win and he wants to be in a position where he can be put in the best position to succeed, essentially, right? You're playing off Luka and Kyrie, two of the best passers in NBA history.
Mm-hmm.
The Mavericks, took the second most threes in the NBA last year. The number of catch-and-shoot opportunities he's going to get with this team is second to none, only to the Celtics. Versus the allure of playing in LA where he's from. His dad is a broadcaster there who's played for them back in the 90s, to play with LeBron James. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to play in LA. And I think had this been years prior, in fact, if the Mavericks hadn't made the finals last year, I don't think Klay Thompson's a Maverick. I think a couple things went into this. Number one, I think Klay, the reporting from Woj came out that the state taxes also were a big thing for him. I think, number one, credit to Klay for going basketball fit over personal fit, or family and all that. Because we've seen a lot of the family stuff, play out, with, I want to be home. I mean, look what Paul George, a couple of years ago saying, I want to go back to LA, same with Kawhi and things like that. I think
that didn't work out.
That didn't work out either. I think the most underrated part of this, and nobody's talking about, is the recruiting pitch from Kyrie Irving. I mean, if you look at the similarities of both of them in terms of A, I'm going to get my money from somebody. Mm-hmm. B, the redemption arc, right? Like Klay is coming off a season where he was immensely disrespected by Golden State. You know, they've paid Draymond Green ahead of him. They paid Andrew Wiggins. They paid Jordan Poole and couldn't pay Klay Thompson, you know, and I understand he had the Achilles and he had the ACL tear. But it's not like Klay is a scrub. Like, he still averaged 18 on 39% shooting from 3 last year. And especially in the second half of the year, he was
on a down year.
On a down year. He was great the second half of the year. Once he started getting his legs under him and kind of getting back into the flow of the game, I think the contract situation weighed on him a lot. I think he felt disrespected by Golden State. And by all accounts, it seems, I can't remember who reported it. I'll have to go back and look. But the Warriors told Klay that Podziemski was going to start ahead of him this coming year. And Klay was unwilling to take a bench role. And I think you put him...
He was already starting over him.
Exactly. Like, they had already done it, but I think going into next year, they had already told him, like, if you come back, you're going to, you're going to be sixth man. So for Klay, it's like, I've got more in the tank. I've got a lot to prove. And I think having Kyrie in his ear saying, this is the place to do it. Like, we were 3 games away from winning the finals. You're the missing piece. You know, we just got our entire game plan got blown apart by Boston. We needed players that could shoot, you know, when Luka and I drive and kick it out. And we couldn't do that. You bring a championship pedigree, you bring experience, you've been in those big moments before. Now these are the 2 veteran guys on the team that have been there, done that. You couple that with Luka, who Klay can teach and pass on some of his wisdom to as well defensively. I mean, what a perfect fit, you know, basketball wise. And I think it's just, it speaks to what Kyrie means to Dallas, what Dallas means to Kyrie. I think it continuously is underrated what that relationship is like. And Nico Harrison, man, I mean, look, to be able to have a seat at the table and not be the first one out where it seems like that was the case for such a long time with the Mavericks. To pull this off and get Klay Thompson for 3 years for $50 million for Klay Thompson is a steal. That is an absolute steal. You're basically switching out Klay Thompson for switching out Tim Hardaway Jr. for Klay Thompson and plugging him right into your starting lineup. I mean, that's an incredible get. And we talked about the odds in the Western Conference. I want to see where that changes because the Mavericks weren't even, I think, top 4 when we looked at the odds in the Western Conference. This should catapult them right up to second. I mean, maybe even first. I mean, you can make an argument for OKC after the moves they've made, but I don't know how the Mavericks are not, you know, at least have the second best odds in the conference to make the finals at this point or get back to the finals.
Yeah, this is a great time to be a Mavericks fan. I mean, this is a great time to be the Mavericks GM, Nico Harrison. He's done incredible. He consistently shows that he is very good at his job. And, you know, back-to-back off seasons where you're going against the Lakers for both of y'all's number one target last season. Last offseason was Kyrie Irving. This offseason was Klay Thompson. And you are the one that is chosen over the Lakers. And I think the Lakers are starting to realize they do not have the same pull that they used to have. You even have LeBron James, you know, top 2 player of all time, saying, I will take a pay cut for you to play with me. I want you to, you know, help us get back to championship material. And Klay says, no, I want to do that with the Mavericks, who were just in the finals.
Yep.
You know, and not only that, you know, Kendra Andrews with ESPN LA reported that he wanted to feel appreciated. He wanted to feel respected. He wanted to feel valued. Those are the same words that Kyrie Irving said before he joined the Mavericks, or right when he joined the Mavericks. And you're starting to see, you know, the same similar situation. You want to see those players feel respected and appreciated and on their own front, not in the shadow of, you know, Steph Curry, even though that's his guy, you know, not in the shadow of LeBron, even though Kyrie and LeBron are on great terms now. You know, you want to see them do it on their own terms in another team. And that's what they're doing right now. Klay Thompson is joining the Mavericks to do that, to have a fresh breath of air and have guys who are pushing him to be the best version of himself. And I think he should start. I think you're going to get him. You're going to get a motivated Klay Thompson this upcoming season, and he's going to pull that clip every single time he's on the three. And Luka creates the most wide open threes. It's perfect. Also, just to list some stats, I mean, this is like you mentioned, his shooting last season is great. He's already the best shooter on the Mavericks team, and he had a very down year of his career. The lowest shooting from 3-point percentage in his career is like 38.5%. That's crazy.
That's insane.
And then his catch and shoot, 38.1. This is all last year, 38.1. His pull-up threes, 41.4%. Tight defense, which is 2 to 4 feet, a defender is 39.5%. Open, 4 to 6 feet, defender in front of you, 39.2. Wide open, 6+ feet, 37.9. 0 dribbles, 38.3. 1 dribble, probably, a pump fake, and then 1 dribble, 42.2%. And then you say, what about corner threes? Because the Mavericks get a lot of them. He didn't shoot that many corner threes from last year. He shot 92 attempts from corner three, 40.2%. And then above the break was 38.7. That's crazy.
And some of those stats you pull out, I mean,
on 597 attempts from above the break.
Luka and Kyrie generating that many threes. And look, Derrick Jones took a lot of corner threes last year, and so did PJ. But the Mavericks didn't have really that consistent threat from above the break or from those wing threes, right? Like, I think those were more Kyrie's kind of bread and butter. But PJ struggled a lot, outside of the corner three. Luka obviously gets his, but to have a guy like Klay Thompson now, where you can put PJ in one corner, put Kyrie in one corner, have Klay on the possibilities are endless. And not only the catch and shoot, but this is going to open up the Mavericks offense a lot more, as opposed to just kind of the ISO ball movement, the ISO ball from Luka and Kyrie. I mean, you're going to get a lot more ball movement, and Klay's going to be a part of that action. Jason Kidd's going to have to make some adjustments, but we've seen him do it before. And I mean, this is just an incredible turnaround. We talked about it when we did our season recap, but to go from a team that missed the playoffs and was in the lottery, a year ago to being in the finals, and then to now being a team that doesn't just stand pat and says, what, that finals appearance didn't go the way we wanted to. Like, we're not just going to run it back. We're going to get better in every single way. We've identified what we need. Let's go get better. And to keep the fact that the Mavericks have not given up a first round pick, Landon, like, that positions them now to make an even bigger move later, whether it's at the deadline, whether it's next year. And they're going to, this is just an incredible, incredible turnaround from 2 years ago. And even you want to look back to when they lost Jalen Brunson. This is an incredible turnaround for the Mavericks organization to be in a position like this, where now you have attracted one of the top 5 shooters of all time in NBA history to come be in the perfect situation basketball wise, playing next to Luka and Kyrie.
And that's why, as soon as they got Kyrie Irving, I was like, okay, cool. The Mavs are back. Obviously, it didn't show on the court is because they didn't have the pieces around them. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I was like, okay, cool. They got Kyrie, so they're about to do something with Nico. And because he is a recruiter, like you just mentioned, and you broke it down. Because when you look at the comparison with Jalen Brunson and Kyrie, obviously the biggest thing is the age difference, but like also recruiting. People like Kyrie around the league. Obviously, Jalen is a good recruiter on his own, but it's a lot of Villanova people.
It's easy to recruit your college buddies,
That's what I'm saying. Like, Kyrie has a lot of pull around the league.
Yeah.
And that's in not only him, Jason Kidd. A lot of players really like and respect Jason Kidd just from as a player and just as a coach as well, because he's a player's coach. He knows what the players are going through. So I think it's a great relationship overall. And if I'm Klay Thompson, the only reason I would choose the Lakers, like, respectfully, is because I'm from LA and my dad is, he played there and he's the broadcaster there. So I would see him every day. But when you really think about basketball, like you said earlier, we've been talking about this. Mavericks are the basketball fit. The Lakers aren't. I see on national media, national TV, they say Klay is a perfect fit for the Lakers. He's actually a perfect fit for the Mavericks because they shot like 17%, the starters did, in the finals. And you just mentioned, Derrick Jones Jr. and PJ. Like, imagine when you have imagine a double screen with Klay Thompson and then Derek Lively.
Oh my
Can
God.
you imagine? Then you have Kyrie on the other side, PJ in the corner, or there's so many options. You have the lob threat, and then you have a pop with Klay Thompson, or you can have a pin down. There's so many things you can do with Klay because he's a movement shooter instead of just stay still. Even if he stays still and got a wide open three, he's gonna knock it down. But I think it's just a perfect basketball fit because of that. His shooting. And the Mavericks get the most wide open shots, especially with the gravity of Luka and Kyrie. And the Lakers are a great 3-point shooting team. And they just drafted a great 3-point shooter with Connect. I didn't think they needed him. I think they needed a center, because AD, he is at his best when he's a 4. Even the fans are begging for a center, just a solid center so he can go back to the 4 because they haven't seen it since McGee and Howard. And that's when they had the most success.
Yeah, and you mentioned something, and what a time where the Lakers are losing players in back-to-back years to the Mavericks. Huh? How about that? But you mentioned something I think it's really interesting about it, and it's the motivation factor for Klay Thompson. Like, he, by all accounts, he turned down offers of 4 years, $80 million. So he's taking less money to play in Dallas.
Oh, with state tax.
State taxes, it kind of evens out, but he wants to stick it to Golden State. He wants to be in a position where he can have a career year, and show that, hey, I'm not done. Like, I'm not washed. Like, we've seen time and time again, players have struggled their first year, 2 years off of injury, right? It takes time, especially when you have 2 really, really bad injuries back to back. It's hard. Now, the second half of the year, I know everyone remembers the 0-for-10 game, against the Kings, but second half of last year, like, we were starting to see old Klay again. He's never going to be what he was, in during the championship run. But as a third guy on a team that can just needs to shoot the ball, like, what better position are you in to get passes from Luka, Kyrie, and Derek Lively, who's an underrated passer for in the center position?
Yes, that's a good point.
So for him, it's the fit is so it's like like a perfect puzzle piece, man. Like, it makes sense in every sense of the in every sense of in basketball sense, right? Like, from positional need to being that leader on the team to having another guy who's been in the finals, a guy who can shoot. The biggest need for the Mavericks was shooting, and you got, again, a top 5 shooter of all time to come to your team, and no player option. He's here and his contract matches up with Luka's, with Kyrie's, this is all in line. Like, Nico Harrison has done such a phenomenal job of revamping this roster around Luka, where now the Mavericks are in prime position to be one of the top teams in the West. And we've talked about the ancillary benefits of this, of if the Mavericks can get a top 3 seed next year, what does that do for Luka Doncic's MVP candidacy? We've talked about, what does it do for PJ Washington? How many open looks is PJ going to get? If you're the defense, who are you double teaming? Are you going to double team Luka or Kyrie and let Klay beat you? Or if Klay is hot from 3, are you going to go cover him and let Luka and Kyrie, like, it's going to be a nightmare for defenses to have to deal with now.
Yeah, not only that, with his MVP candidacy, which he's neck and neck with Jokic in the odds right now, but also whose team got worse with the Nuggets, with KCP leaving. Also, not only that, it just shows Luka that the Mavericks are here to make the team the best that they can be. A couple years ago, after before the Kyrie trade, there were people in national media say, is Luka going to be here? And that's the thing that you see is Nico came in without experience, and that's what makes him even more remarkable. he had the relationships with being with Nike, but he didn't have the GM or assistant GM experience. And he came in here and he really dominated every single trade that he's made. And he also showed Luka that I'm going to put people around you, and not only showing Luka that, hey, I'm gonna give you Kyrie, I'm gonna give you Klay Thompson, I'm gonna give you Derrick Lively, Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington. The list goes on. Outside of that, there's a small secret weapon with Omax. Just wait for him, and then just the list goes on. But not only Luka, but other players around the league.
Yeah,
like if I'm a guy that is looking for a title or a vet min opportunity, why would you not want to play with Kyrie, Luka, Klay Thompson, Derrick Lively, all the Daniel Gafford, and all these guys on this team? Jason Kidd, who's a players coach who gets people paid.
Yeah,
he gets people paid. Yeah. Brunson, Derrick Jones Jr. He got Josh Green an extension by playing him. It just shows that this team is going to be here for a while. And Kyrie said that, because when you're in the moment, you're thinking, dang, the Mavericks are losing bad to the Celtics. They lost the finals, 4-1. And in that moment, Kyrie's always big picture. He's saying, before you reach success, you have to go through failure. And he's also saying, this is not just year one. Like, we are here for year 2, year 3, year 4. We're trying to be at this level for years to come. And not only that, you're balancing out a very young roster. Like you could say, oh, Thompson's getting older. Okay. The Mavericks have how many guys under 26?
Yeah.
And then they just added Marshall, who's 26. And then you're saying, well, his defense has declined. Okay. How many blocks did Green, Looney, Kuminga, Jackson, Davis, how many blocks did they have when you compared it to Lively, Gafford, and PJ?
Yeah.
They average like a 1.5 more blocks, 3 people versus 4 people.
And I also think the defense will come around. I mean,
it's different having a rim protection behind you.
It 100% is. And I think a motivated Klay is going to want to be, a guy who I'm sure he's going to be on, in his mind, can I make all NBA defensive team again? Can I get back to that level? He's never going to be the on-ball defender that he was. He was the best two-way player in the league for half a decade, if not longer. It's never going to be that again. But man, if he's hitting 39% from 3 and he'll take, some of the smaller guards, in the Western Conference, that's, you can put PG on some of the bigger wings, and if Luka improves and again, you funnel it into Lively, Gafford, I mean, that's tough, like it's like you said, it's much different playing when you've got rim protection like that.
Yeah. And then also, I mean, he's not going to be playing 40, plus minutes. I mean, you got Quentin Grimes, you got Dante Exum, you got guys who can come in, even Marshall, for he can guard wings really well, but I'm talking guards. Even Kyrie has stepped up his defense a lot after the trade deadline last season. I think this whole team is going to be very team first mentality, and they're trying to make the finals again. You got OKC, who is probably the only team that really looks like they're ahead of you, or neck and neck for next season.
Yeah, that's exact. I was just thinking that. I was, because you and I were talking about the odds, and I'm looking. Obviously, there's a lot of other moves that have to be done. There's going to be more trades and other deals, but it seems like everybody went to the East. Like the Knicks got significantly better. The Sixers obviously got significantly better. Boston kept their core together. The Bucks,
when healthy
Giannis, Dame. But if you look in the West, I mean, the Clippers lost Paul George. They're probably going to lose Russell Westbrook. The Nuggets, back-to-back years, have lost Bruce Brown and KCP. And
Jeff Green, Reggie Jackson.
Reggie Jackson can't really afford to pay anybody. Memphis is coming back from injury. Minnesota, are they going to get Conley back? Or, they're going to have some cap maneuvering to do once they pay Ant here. Are they going to have to give
Dillingham?
I do like the Dillingham pickup for them, but I mean, he's they're going to have to play, jump rope with the cap because their owner's, notoriously cheap. Glenn Taylor, if he doesn't eventually sell it to Alex Rodriguez. So
That's the longest sale I've ever seen in my life.
Oh my God, I know. And it's like, are they gonna have to ship out Cat? I don't think you're gonna trade Gobert after you gave up, all your picks for him.
I think that after making the Western Conference Finals, you keep your top guys for at least a couple more years.
You keep him, but I mean, he's notoriously like not a taxpayer, so it's going to be interesting, right? So like, I mean, you look at the Western Conference, other than OKC, and look, things can change, everything's fluid. We don't know. This is just going right now, day 2 of free agency. You've got to put the Mavericks and Thunder right now as the 2 best teams in the Western Conference. When, I mean, just based on the moves that they made. The Thunder kept their guys in Isaiah Joe, Andrew Wiggins, and you bring in Hartenstein, who their biggest need was rebounding. I mean, they had to overpay for him, but you still got him. So you're going to have Chet and Hartenstein.
Lively and Gafford made them get Hartenstein.
Yeah. And so now, and I don't even think that puts them above the Mavericks, to be honest. But
it's gonna be close.
Yeah, it's gonna be. But the Mavericks have. It's such a relief and such a stark contrast from years ago when the Mavericks would sit on their hands and wait. And I know we're going to get into the Derrick Jones Jr. stuff, and maybe this is the segue to that, but to be able to pivot immediately and say, okay, this is not, this plan is not working. Let's go do something else to improve our team. It's such a relief, and it's an amazing thing to see, from this organization.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Obviously, we'll save the Grimes trade for last word, but let's talk about Derrick Jones Jr. I mean, he was a starter for predominantly the whole season, and he did really well. He improved his game all around, from ball handling to shooting to even his defense, which was still okay previously. He became a well-rounded player after just being a dunker and athleticism. In a part-time defender here and there at different teams. He really defined a role for himself. He really did great. He found a home for himself, what it looked like, until at the end of the season. And things happened, and then the Mavericks, like you just said, it pivoted, and they went to Naji Marshall, who is very similar. He's a better passer. He's a better ball handler, but Derrick Jones Jr., he can guards more. He's more athletic. He gets a lot more lobs, and Marshall's more defending wings. So when you look at what transpired, because Nico said priority 1A and 1B, what's your thoughts on just how the whole thing took place with Marshall signing and then Derrick Jones Jr.? Marshall had 3 years, $27 million, and Derrick Jones Jr. right after that, 3 years, $30 million with the Clippers.
The timing of it, now that I go back and think about it, I mean, they were very quick. Like, within like 30 minutes, both of those moves were announced. So to me, a couple things. One, I feel like, first off, the whole agency change that happened with Derrick Jones Jr. firing his agent and then signing on with Clutch. There's an NBA rule for the NBA Players Association where you have to wait 15 days to make that new representation, active, which can hinder the free agency process. You can still make deals for yourself. There's ways to kind of go around it where your old agent signs for you and gives it to Clutch and Rich Paul and whatever the case may be. That kind of put, I think, the Mavericks on notice a little bit when that happened on Friday. And I think they got a sense of the 3 for 30 wasn't something the Mavericks weren't going to do, in my opinion. I think that would have been a fine, because you're still not using the entire, mid-level exception for Derrick Jones. I just think the Klay stuff really got to Derrick Jones Jr. because I think if you bring in Klay, he's starting. Klay is not coming here to be a sixth man. So if Klay's coming, that means somebody's moving to the bench, and it's going to be Derrick Jones.
Yeah.
So I think for Derrick Jones Jr., he felt, and rightfully so, that he had a year where he should be starting next year. And, good for him. He 100% deserves it. And you had the Clippers sitting there right after they lost Paul George, came in very, very swiftly and got Derrick Jones Jr. And you and I talked about this. I thought if Paul George went elsewhere, if Golden State had swung a trade for him, I felt Derrick Jones was going to end up either in Philly or the Clippers. So he had a starting spot with one of those two teams. It's gonna be in LA. The Rich, obviously maybe Rich Paul wanted him in LA. Maybe he was in his ear saying, "Hey, look, this Klay stuff is heating up." And him being on the LeBron side, maybe he knew like, "Hey, Klay to Dallas is very, very strong. Like you're not going to be starting there, so let's look for something else for you." I'm happy for him. He was great for us. I think the shooting woes, definitely maybe turn the Mavericks off a little bit. I don't know. But look, you talk about a guy, Naji Marshall, has a very similar background to Derrick Jones Jr. in the sense of he was undrafted. He's come off the bench primarily in his career. He's averaged under 10 points a game, but he's used to that role. He's used to being that guy off the bench.
Yeah.
Shot a career best 38.7% from three last year. He's not the same point of attack defender that Derrick Jones Jr. is, but he's a little bit quicker with his feet. He's a dog. Like there's clips.
More physical.
He's a lot more physical than Derrick Jones. He's bigger body than Derrick Jones Jr.
Ask Jimmy Butler.
And I think he has a quote where he says, if somebody's going to mess with Zion or Brandon Ingram, they got to come through me first. So he's another enforcer, that you have on the team, brings a little bit more grit and toughness with PJ Washington there.
Can you imagine that though? Like, because Derrick Jones Jr., he defends him. Like, if someone messes with him or if someone acts out of bounds, he will step up. But Naji is, from what I've seen, is more like PJ. Like, I'm gonna defend Luka no matter what. I'm gonna defend the star no matter what and set the tone.
And I remember watching games, against the Pelicans. I mean, the guy was all over Kyrie, he's all over Luka. I mean, he was the one off the bench who was guarding them straight up, and
his
causing problems.
Is the knife.
Yeah, because he can do everything, and I think he's a better 3-point. You're basic. They're very, very similar. When it came out that was kind of plan B, it was like, okay, it makes sense because it's a 1-for-1 swap. Basically you're substituting the athleticism that Derrick Jones Jr. has for a guy who's probably a better shooter, to be honest. So, look, again, the ability for Nico Harrison to understand that, okay, we're probably not going to get Derrick Jones Jr. Let's pivot. Let's quickly sign Naji Marshall before somebody else scoops him up. We know he's going to fit on this team. Let's just get him and we'll let the Klay stuff play out. If this was Donnie Nelson, the Mavericks have got their hands in their pocket waiting for Klay to make a decision before they do anything else. And if that doesn't happen, then the Mavericks are left with what? Nothing. Then you're left getting minimum guys. You're probably getting a Nick Batum or something like that, guys who don't really I like Nick Batum, but you don't want a 38-year-old, small power forward. No, like you want Naji Marshall at this point in his career is probably a better defender than Nick Batum is probably, Batum's a good shooter, don't get me wrong. But you want
he's the maxi role.
Exactly. So just the foresight of Nico Harrison to pivot and go get Naji Marshall and understand we can't wait around because we've got to keep this thing going. We just made the finals. How do we get back? Is unbelievable. And I think Naji Marshall understands his role. You talk about a guy who can come in off the bench, sub in for PJ, sub in for Klay. When you need defense, you can swap one of them out and throw in Naji in there. I think it's a great signing. I think it's super under the radar. I don't think it's going to get a lot of attention, but that's a very, very low key signing that's going to, I think, pay big dividends for the Mavericks.
I agree with you. I think it was great. I mean, I like a lot of the Pelicans players. So if you can get any of those players, I like
you and your Brandon Ingram love.
I like Brandon Ingram a lot. He's one of my favorite players to watch. I hope he is healthy because you saw when he is healthy, he can hoop. He's the king of mid-range. He's old school basketball. Mm-hmm. He was an all-star when he was fully healthy. But I like other players on that team. Alvarado. I like
Herb Jones
Murphy. Yeah. I like obviously Marshall, who's here. They have a lot of Nance, who just left. They had a lot of great role players, and if you can get any of the Pelicans role players, you're in good hands. And it's also a 3-year deal. He's still young. He's 26, and he doesn't turn 27 till January, I believe. So he's honestly, I agree with everything you said. He's 6'7" with a 7'1" wingspan. He didn't shoot a lot of threes, but when he shot it, it was very good.
Yeah.
So that gives you great hope. 42% on corner threes last season. He had a career year shooting the ball. Hopefully that stays in trend. It comes over to the Mavericks because you're going to get a lot of wide open shots and a lot in the corner three. So, he was 40.7% on wide open threes. So I think, and he's only a year older than your best player. I think he's a great fit for the Mavericks. And I think not only are you taking an experiment, but a proven experiment on your team. Because, when you reach the finals, even Nico said it, you want to just tinker with the roster a little bit. But, I think this is a proven tinker. I mean, like he's shown he can play off the bench really well. And I think that's what they wanted, someone who can, step in that role, even though Derrick Jones Jr. was fine with the bench role, because he did come off the bench for like 10 games for Josh Green, I believe. And he was all about winning. We even talked about it. Remember, we're like, you're in a contract year and you're still, part of the winning mentality, which was, applauded. So I'm happy for him. I mean, it's not a threat to the Mavericks at all because the Clippers lost Paul George.
Yeah.
But, I'm happy for him getting paid. 30 mil in 3 years. I think he's made 29 mil in 6 or 7 years in the league. So, that's good for him. He got the bank and he gets to play with good players. I mean, and a very good coach, Ty Lue.
Yeah, in a new arena.
That'll be fun. You have a defined role, like you mentioned. That was the defined role, being a starter. And I agree with you. I think he wanted to come back. He's talked about it, but most players talk about it. But you see it that he wanted to come back. And I think business is business, like you mentioned. The agency, the reprioritization of free agency for the Mavericks, shifting to Klay Thompson when they saw that was a real opportunity. I think. Like you mentioned, this is going to be his prime. I would think you would want to be a starter. And the Clippers are still a good team. They're not going to be a top 4 team like they were this past season, but they'll still be in the, 7 to 9 range, or,
play-in team maybe. I mean,
a play-in team. You still got the Suns, Lakers around that range of the Clippers, the Kings.
As always, it's going to depend on Kawhi's health, and more so this year than ever, right? Because I mean, now you don't got Paul George, you're probably going to lose Russell Westbrook. Don't have Mason Plumlee. I mean, you're
PJ Tucker. He opted in as soon as possible on that 11.
That team is old, man. You got PJ Tucker. They re-signed Batum. You've got old Kawhi and old James Harden. I mean,
and I don't like that pick that they did. I'm not going to mention his name, but that they did pick up as well. In addition to Derrick Jones, you got, that guard that they picked up, but I don't want to go into that. Yeah.
I mean, look, it good for him. We're happy. I think everyone should be happy for Derrick Jones, and you got to do what's best for you. And that's what he did. And I think it's hard sometimes because you hear I'm priority 1A, 1B, but then when there's an opportunity to go get Klay Thompson, you got to do it, and I don't fault. Yeah. In fact, I applaud Nico for doing that. I mean, I understand that that's your top priority, but at the end of the day, who's going to, who fits this team better, for where this team is? And I think it's Klay Thompson. And so hats off to Nico to go in and get him, and then getting a guy who essentially replaces Derrick Jones Jr. in Naji Marshall.
And I look, I'll just say it, man. You can't get attached to players. Okay, of course, like Luka, Kyrie, I mean, but like I'm talking role players, you can't get attached. Business is business. Like I've learned that firsthand just from a media perspective and a personal perspective, because Dorian Finney-Smith was one of my favorite players to be around and watch and just see him grow. And he was gone. I mean, you got Kyrie, but like that was a tough blow because you thought he was a Mavs lifer.
Yeah.
So after that, even though Derrick Jones was kind of similar, but not as much of the magnitude as Dorian, because I really liked him as a person. He was just very down to earth, and he he didn't have the celebrity mentality. Like he would always say, "What's up?" or just dap you up, when you're in the hallway. But you know, with Nico, business is business. Like
you gotta love that though. I mean, it's such a change,
in a good way.
It's such a change, and that's how it should be. The NBA is a business.
He wants to win.
You got to do what it takes, man.
And I'm right there with you. So, and that's why it's kind of a win-win situation. Like you still see Derrick Jones Jr. get paid and become a starter on a playoff team. So that's great business. And then the Mavericks get a similar guy. You mentioned the differences. We both did, and they still hopefully keep the same consistent play from him. Like you still hopefully get the same similar stats and better shooting. Yep. And that's all you can hope for. Okay, so Shahnavaz, last word. Quentin Grimes, the Mavericks have finally traded Tim Hardaway Jr. It's been forever, it feels like. But they trade him in second round picks to the Detroit Pistons for Quentin Grimes. What's your thoughts on that trade, and how do you see Quentin Grimes fitting into the Mavericks?
I think that was the first domino to fall, right? I think you had to open up space for Klay. It was, you got to get off Tim Hardaway Jr. And look, you bring back a guy who
open space for Naji.
For Naji.
Well, it was Derrick Jones.
It was Derrick Jones, yeah. But in order to get both of them, because there was a route where Dallas could have re-signed both, but
correct.
You bring back a guy who arguably is the same player as Josh Green, who's going to Charlotte in that Klay Thompson, deal.
Yeah.
And I think the Mavs are getting a couple second round picks back for that. We don't know the full details yet, but Quentin Grimes is, a young guy. He's costing you pretty much nothing, to keep him on your books. The Mavs can extend him an offer, a qualifying offer after this year that'll make him restricted. So, you kind of get a free year with him and kind of see, what he can do. I mean, before his injury, with the Knicks, this is a guy that was shooting 39% from three and averaged 11 points a game. And he was considered untouchable by the Knicks when they were going after Donovan Mitchell. This is a guy that at the time the Knicks were like, no, we're not giving you Quentin Grimes. He can be your best on-ball defender. That's how good Quentin Grimes is. That was his calling card. When he was drafted and was playing for the Knicks, he was the one who was guarding some of the best guards in the Eastern Conference when he first came up with the Knicks a couple of years ago. Then he got traded to Detroit in the Bogdanovich and Alec Burks deal and, played 6 games and pretty much sat out the rest of the year as Detroit tried to tank and then still, unfortunately, got the 5th pick like they always do. But I'm a big fan of Quentin Grimes. I think, again, it's a 1-for-1 swap with Josh Green. You're kind of replacing that. I don't know if the intensity is the same, but defensively he's better. He moves his feet better. He's able to get around screens a lot better than Josh Green was. And in all honesty, I think he's a better shooter than Josh Green. The numbers from Detroit won't show it, but if you look back at his time with the Knicks, I think his per 36 minutes over his career, I think he's a 37% shooter from three, and averaging about 14 a game. So if he can be kind of your second guy off the bench, second or third guy off the bench, fill really that Josh Green role, 18, 20 minutes a game, learning from Klay Thompson. What a deal for the Mavericks, a really, really high upside player. And if it doesn't work out, you don't extend him the qualifying offer. He's an unrestricted free agent, after this year, and you go get somebody else. And I think the really important part of this all as well, Landon, is the Mavericks are still under the first apron, which is just unbelievable cap management by Andrew Baker, who, if people don't know who Andrew Baker is, the Mavericks hired him away from the Nets a few years ago. He is the guy that essentially was able to manipulate the cap for the Nets to get KD, Kyrie, and James Harden and DeAndre Jordan under the salary cap at the time before all this apron stuff came out. So getting a guy like Andrew Baker who understands really the intricacies of what the salary cap is, and for the Mavericks to still be under the first apron now, that opens up, they still have their biannual exception where they can go get another ball handler, a guy like Spencer Dinwiddie, a guy like Dennis Smith Jr. Do they want to bring back Markieff Morris? We talked about this earlier. Do they just cut AJ Lawson and bring back Markieff and add another ball handler? It's going to be interesting to see. You've still got contracts that can be moved, like Maxi Kleba, if Omax develops the way they want over the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, to trade Tim Hardaway Jr., a guy who is, was completely out of the rotation, for Quentin Grimes, who basically replaces Josh Green, is again just a stroke of genius from Nico Harrison. And I really like Grimes' upside. So I'm excited to see him. He's going to get his opportunity. The only question for him is, can he stay healthy? And I think he's got the ability where he could be in a position to get paid as well after this year.
Yeah, and that's another player who I'll use the word motivation.
Yep.
To prove himself. He obviously proved it with New York, but just being injured and then being with with the Pistons, that takes a toll on you, not just physically, obviously with recovery and stuff, but it takes a toll on you mentally. I mean, you're with a team and they're tanking and you're losing game after game. I mean, and then you join a winning culture with the Mavericks, who just 3 games away from the championship, and also they get Klay Thompson, so you don't have to feel the pressure of starting, as the best POA on the team. You actually get to have the pressure of the same role as Josh Green. You just go in the game and do your thing.
Yep.
Guard the best player and make threes, and he can pass too. He's an underrated passer. I think they're similar, honestly. I mean, obviously, when Grimes was healthy, he's a better player, but like, we haven't seen that in a year or two. So I mean, he has a lot to prove. I mean, this is the year, and he, like you just mentioned, contract. Go get your Jason Kidd is here to get players paid. So if you perform, you'll get paid, and hopefully you stay with the Mavericks. If not, you go somewhere else and you have a great contract. But I think the Mavericks, with his age, I think they didn't want to lose Josh Green, but it's Klay Thompson, so you had to.
Yeah.
And then you have a cheaper Josh Green on the team with Quentin Grimes, and if he performs, you give him the same contract as Josh Green.
I mean, and he's younger than Josh Green too, I think, by a year or two.
Yeah, it's a year, and it's the full circle moment. So
yeah,
and then you get a great 3-and-D guy who's an underrated passer. So it's incredible. Nico is incredible.
It's just it's so hard. Like, it's still unbelievable to me that, like, this is where the Mavericks are at this point.
He's not done.
He's not done. There's still moves to be made, and I don't think the Mavericks will be quiet at the trade deadline either. I think they every deadline since Nico's been here has made a move. So
yeah,
it's gonna. I'm fascinated to see how this offseason progresses.
And I want to see them get a point guard, like you mentioned. I mean, honestly, they could use a backup power forward, because you can't rely on Maxi. We mentioned that last podcast, but at the same, on his health.
Yeah.
Because when he's healthy, he's good. But, I really want to see Omax get a chance. Can you imagine Quentin Grimes, Marshall, and Omax and Gafford coming off your bench, the defense on that?
Yeah, and then depending on matchups, you're switching out Jaden Hardy, Dante Exum, and then if you bring in a guy like Dennis Smith Jr., guy who can play defense. I mean, if you need more on-ball defenders, you bring in him, for a stretch. If you need offense, you bring in Jaden Hardy for sure. I mean, Jason Kidd's going to have a lot of options. This isn't going to be, where you got to stick to your first, 6-7 guys. You're going to be able to go out there and deploy different lineups.
And also, they're not going to play. They're not going to play a lot of minutes like the stars. Hopefully, because hopefully that's what you want. Because you saw they're kind of gassed at the end of the playoff run, and you want to, use the rest of your players as much as you can during the regular season, especially now that you have a great team. Like last year, they were a great team after the trade deadline. Like over a course of a season, you don't want to play Kyrie a lot. Like you don't want to play Klay a lot. You can play, a lot of games, but you don't want to play them a lot in the game.
Yeah. If you can cut Luka's minutes from 36 to 33, cut Kyrie to 32, Klay to,
at least in the first half of the season.
Yeah, you just take 2-3 minutes off the games. That all adds up. Some of these blowouts, you don't play the fourth quarter. These high pressure or high profile games. If it is against the Thunder, and especially later in the year. But to your point, beginning of the year, first half of the year, there's no need. Like, you look at it, as much as we love Luka Doncic, he doesn't need to be putting up 34 points a game. Like, the best scenario, if he averaged 28, 10, and 12, I mean, in 32, 33 minutes, I mean, that's a hell of a year.
Well, his assists are definitely going up with Klay Thompson. That's a couple more threes a game. He's probably going to make 4 threes a game at least. I mean, off of 9 attempts, he's probably going to get 10 attempts with Luka and Kyrie. So I think this is incredible offseason so far with Nico Harrison. He hasn't missed on a trade. That's what's very impressive when you look at his resume as a GM. Would you put him in the top? Last word. Would you put him in the top? Let me make it hard for you. Would you put him in the top 3 GMs right now?
Oh boy, that's hard. I think you have to. You're probably putting. Right now, you're probably what, Brad Stevens, Sam Presti, Nico. Like, I think that's your list.
Just name them.
Right? Like, that's probably your list. I mean, I would have said Bob Myers, but he's gone from Golden State,
What about the Knicks?
Yeah, see, Leon Rose has done a great job too. But the Knicks is different because it's like the whole Villanova thing. It's like you're not going out and you're just getting your college buddies.
Jalen has a lot of pull, yeah.
That's a little bit like, and hats off to them because, I mean, to pull off the OG trade and then go get Mikal Bridges, but, really, like, what, 5 firsts and 2 swaps from Mikal Bridges. I mean, you definitely overpaid, but still, like, you wanted to get your Villanova team together. Fine, go for it. But that's a scenario we haven't seen in the NBA before, right? That's like Kyrie recruiting all Duke players to come play, or Kevin Durant was like, hey, I want all former Longhorns to come, and called me and told me to come play for Phoenix. I would jump at that. But, or Luka was like, hey, let's get all Europeans. I want Jokic, Giannis, Wemby, like, it doesn't happen. So this Knicks thing is very different. But, I mean, you got to put Nico top 5 for sure. I mean, after the Kyrie trade,
I was going to say top 5, but I wanted to make it hard for you.
I think top 5 for sure, because I think now that you mention it, what Leon Rose has done for the Knicks over the past couple of years to get Brunson and then to kind of, bring the Knicks back into. I mean, look, when the Knicks are good, the NBA is better, right? I think we can all agree on that. But I think what he's done is great, and he's done it over a longer period of time. I think this move puts Nico in that top 5 range, until the Mavericks. I mean, I still am putting Brad Stevens and Sam Presti 1, 2, and then take 3, 4, 5 and figure out where you want to put him. But he's 100% top 5 now.
Yeah. All right, so folks, make sure y'all like and subscribe. We appreciate y'all tuning in, and be sure to follow us on social media. You see the usernames. It's a very exciting times in Dallas. I tweeted it out. Dallas is now a destination city. When you beat the Lakers 2 off seasons in a row, and you got the recruiter in Nico Finley and now Kyrie. Like, Luka doesn't even have to recruit people. Like, Kyrie said he could say, Luka, I got this. Like, just tell me who you want, or let's talk about who we want as a team, and then I got all the recruiting. So that's incredible to see. Just not only this offseason with Klay and some of the guys that they're getting, but just imagine down the road, or vet minimums. Just imagine the opportunities that come their way after this. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to y'all next time some big news happens. So thanks for tuning in. Goodbye, everyone.